All right, so I'm live streaming it to YouTube, but I'm also recording it to my
Hello.
computer. So I expect we'll have a good recording either on YouTube or I'll pull it off my computer and upload it later. Nancy, I hear you. I can hear you.
I hear you too.
All right, good.
I hear you too.
Good. All right, well, it is 1 minute after 6, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I certainly appreciate everyone coming out tonight for our first membership development training webinar or seminar. And what we're going to cover tonight is sort of what I'd consider sort of an introduction to the league, talking about the structure. I'll go through I'm going to kick off. I always have to have slides. I'm about to share my slides. But I wanted to also introduce everyone here, to two people that will speak later on in the program. And they're from National. Leah Edwards is board of directors treasurer, and she is our state liaison. Leah, if you wave your hand, Leah, so everybody can see you. And then Demetrius Fisher is also with the National League, and he is our Southeastern Hub coordinator. And that's something you may not have heard about before, but I think is going to be tremendously important for us to be more effective in the future as we work together across Alabama, not only across Alabama, but also with our neighboring states across the South, because there's so many issues that we're seeing that are, shared by our sister states across the region. So I'm going to get started and I'll share my screen. And then when it's to the right point, I'll bring them in. And if you could put your questions in chat, or at the end of all this, we'll open it up for questions and we'll pick the ones out of chat. And then, if we have time, then we'll go in and let people raise their hand and speak out. So let me share my screen. I can figure out where I put it. Okay, there it is. All right. So tonight we're looking at the organization of the league. And what that means is, I'm going to go to the next slide. We're going to talk about, I'm going to introduce the league. We're going to talk about the structure and the organization and some of the policies that have been flowed down to all state and local leagues across the country. Even if you're a brand new member at large unit, you have to pick up the nonpartisanship and DEI policy and include it in your bylaws. So this is a common theme across all of the league. And then we'll kick to mission priorities and the critical role that the impact on positions document holds. And then we'll switch gears and talk about the Southeastern region and the transformation roadmap. So let me go. I'm going to get it where I can see you guys, because I have trouble when I can't see people, just feeling separate. Let's see. All right. Can you see the charts okay? Okay. All right. So the organization of the league, it's a 3-level organization. They call that a tri-federated organization. There's a national league, which includes, it's just the League of Women Voters of the United States. But then they've got a trust fund that's called the Education Fund. And that's where things like Vote 411 are run out of. Then at the state level, and talking about Alabama, we've got what is called the General Fund, which is our C3 organization. And then we've got our Education Fund, which is our C4 organization. And then member-at-large units and member-at-large members are members at the state and the national level. And then we've got 9 local leagues across the state of Alabama. And I listed them here. I'll show you on a map in a little bit. 15 counties there are 15 counties in Alabama that have coverage of a local league. The Alabama League covers the entire state, but there are only 15 counties out of, I think, around, 67 that in Alabama. So we've got a long way to grow. but that's opportunity. So we need to be looking at how we can bring in these other communities to be a part of the league. So people who are in local leagues are considered members of the local, state, and national organization. We're all part of the League of Women Voters. And as I said before, we've got 9 local leagues in Alabama. I went in and just put a star on the counties that have local league presence. And so you can kind of see, the Tennessee Valley is up in the top right corner, and it has 5 counties. And then over in the Shoals, Lauderdale County, and then Birmingham has Jefferson and Shelby, and then Tuscaloosa is Tuscaloosa County, and then going down to the middle of the state, the Montgomery League is at the state's capital in that county, and then over to the east, to the right side of the slide, Lee County is where Auburn is, and that's where the East Alabama League is. And then you go down to the corner of the state, the southeast corner of the state, and that's the Southeast Alabama League. And that is centered over Dothan, but it also includes the Wiregrass area of the state. And then moving over to Mobile Bay, you've got Baldwin County and Mobile County. And those are 2 more leagues that are local leagues within the state of Alabama. And so that gives you a feel for, how spread out we are, but also we've got so many connections, and this is what makes us strong. So when you think about a federated structure, that is a structure, an organizational structure for an organization that is both centralized and decentralized. And you can see the tier 1 part of the federated structure is the National League. And that includes the board of directors for the National League. It includes the trust fund, the education fund. It also includes the staff of the National League. And then you look at tier 2, and you've got the organization that's called the state board at League of Women Voters of Alabama. We've got 2 boards. We've got the general fund board and the education fund board. Also, we have several teams that have been created to bring together some of the directors from our state boards, along with people who are volunteering for the local league. They're working together at a state level on some of these teams, like the advocacy team, the DEI team. We're hoping we've been trying to get started a voter services team that I think this next year we're going to, finally be able to make that happen. And all of that is going to give us an opportunity for all of us to work together, not to say we have to all do things exactly alike, but we can share things that worked. We can also share resources as far as creating common messaging and things like that. Then at the tier 3, we've got a local leagues. And like I said before, we've got 9 local leagues across the state of Alabama. And then under that, each local league will have their committees. And for example, they may have an advocacy committee. That all of these tiers work autonomously, but yet they're part of a whole. They're all part of the League of Women Voters. And so you can see that even though they're autonomous, there's a lot of interaction and working together between these different levels of the organization. So just getting down to basics, one of the fundamental policies for the league is nonpartisanship. And this is actually what I consider the thing that makes us super strong, because we do not ever support or oppose candidates or political parties at any level of government. But we're always working on issues that are vital to our members, as well as the public. So, it provides a guidepost for us to know, when we're out there, we cannot in any part of our organization be perceived or in fact partisan. So I did need to point out one of the things that when I was a brand new league member, this really kind of was hard for me to wrap my head around, but it's fundamental. Issues are not partisan. The league's work is based on issues. We'll talk about the impact on positions. These positions have been developed over the years through careful study and input by members across the country and voted on at convention voted on for the state positions. They're voted on at our convention for the state positions. But these are not coming from politicians. And even when a candidate or a party would take on the same position that we have, we're not going to go out and endorse that candidate or the party. If a party changes its position, that doesn't mean we change. You know, we remain true to our issues and our positions. And that is getting back. Janine made a comment earlier. Yes, Janine. Yeah,
We
Janine.
have a request that you use full screen for your slides. Is that possible?
Let's see if I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see that better?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for mentioning that. All right. We'll have to, let's see. All right. So a policy that has been adopted, it was adopted by national and then flowed down to all the state and local leagues, is our DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. This was passed by the National League membership in 2020. And just to read it for you, it's, there shall be no barriers to full participation in the League of Women Voters. And you can say of the United States, is also state or local, on the basis of gender identity, ethnicity, race, native or indigenous origin, age, generation, sexual orientation, culture, religion, belief system, marital status, parental status, socioeconomic status, language, accent, ability status, mental health, educational level or background, geography, nationality, work style, work experience, job role, function, thinking style, personality type, physical appearance, political perspective or affiliation, and any other characteristic that can be identified as recognizing or illustrating diversity. So you can see by this policy that this is intended to say that, there are no barriers to participation based on any of these parameters. This is something that all levels of the league are required to adopt and live with and live by, and make sure that we're accommodating these differences and cherishing the uniqueness, because each one of these is help. If we can understand the barriers that are being the barriers that are being experienced, for instance, by someone who is disabled, then we can be better able to provide support and also advocacy for the issues that affect them. And so when we have membership that represents these diversity too, then we'll be better able to know what it is that we need to do to be able to serve that community better as we follow our mission. All right, sorry, I went the wrong direction. All right, so right now I want to switch gears a little bit to just kind of illustrate what each level of the league does. If you were going to look at the national level, their organization is responsible for lobbying at the federal level. They litigate as needed. They coordinate national campaigns on issues. And for example, People Power Fair Maps, that was a campaign focused on redistricting. And Alabama was one of the states that was working with the National League. They also support national and local leagues. I've called on the National League several times over the last couple of years to get assistance in writing press releases or getting their advice on different topics. We have even filed amicus briefs with the National League. The National League also maintains overall organizational governance, and that's what ties all these three levels of our tri-federated organization together. And they also promote the national visibility of the organization. So going to the state level, the LWV of Alabama, we advocate at state level issues, and we litigate as necessary. We litigated during 2020 on the Vote Safe Alabama, and that was to sue Secretary of State Merrill to get safe, make polling places safer and the voting experience safer during the pandemic. That's an example. We also are providing education on issues. You see all the different educational forums that we've been providing, and this is something we offer to the state. And we coordinate Vote 411 efforts for the state level races, and that includes all the way from the governor on down. I think, Gene, that goes all the way to the county commission. Is that, or is it? We go down to a level, and then the local leagues pick up and work the Vote 411 at the lower level. And so that in that way, national Vote 411 covers the national races. We cover the statewide races, and local leagues will cover the municipality and other races that are during the elections.
Yes.
Okay. And then we provide specific support at the state level for voter services, and that's for things like state and federal candidate forums. We help coordinate or offer support for get out the vote efforts. We have a statewide voting rights restoration network. We are establishing a disability voting rights coalition, which is bringing together organizations who are disabled that are focusing on they're focusing on voting rights. We're working with them to help, basically provide a forum for all of us to come together to find a way to improve the voting rights for people with disabilities. And this past year, we've added the Alabama channel, which has been a real transformational program for the state of Alabama to provide visibility into what's happening in Montgomery. So going on to local leagues. Local leagues engage in advocacy at the local or regional level. These are things that are not considered statewide issues. Local leagues support calls to action from the state league as well as the national league on advocacy issues. They provide education on issues, and this is for their, this would be, primarily more than likely for people within their region, but we've seen some local leagues that have been providing educational forums that have been offered to the statewide level, and that is amazing. We appreciate that. And I've already talked about Vote 411, but local leagues will also be focusing on providing election information, which would be like candidate forums, like for municipal races or other races that are within their region. They also, are having get out the vote efforts, and they're providing opportunities for members to get engaged. And the local leagues are sort of like, ground zero. This is where a lot of leagues, where a lot of league members, spend most of their time is working with local league on their voter drives or their different events. But, we do want you to be aware there are volunteer opportunities up and down the organization. And the local leagues are also providing visibility within the community. And all of this together is really making the league a recognized organization across the country. And as I said before, we all collaborate. We work together, we mesh together very well, and we complement each other, and we are there to make sure we're all working and making democracy work for people across the country. So I went to the lwv.org website, and I pull these mission priorities, and I think it kind of helps to lay these out here to really emphasize that the National League, they've got these mission priorities, which you probably, as a local league member, you recognize these are the same kind of things you're working on. The entire organization from top to bottom is focusing on voting rights, which would include expanding voter access, fighting voter suppression, redistricting. We're opposed to the money in politics affecting the decisions that are being made by people who should be representing the communities that they're in. We'll also have priorities as far as the elections, because our vote is our voice, it's our power. And through elections, we're making our voices heard. And anything that is affecting the fairness of elections is not that. We want to empower and protect the millions of voters every year to make sure elections are fair, accessible, and representative of all Americans. And part of that would be educating voters, providing the Vote 411 service, and then making sure that voter registration is increased. And this is a year-round activity. There are some other issues. This is just a few of them, but there are other issues that are also mission priorities. And that includes advancing healthcare, to protecting the environment. We've got other issues. I've listed a few here: census and immigration. But when you look at the impact on positions document, which we'll drop a link to it in the chat in just a little bit. But when you look through there, you can see a lot of the issues, the positions that the league has taken on issues that probably cover things you care about. More than likely, I would dare say that it's in there. All right, so now I'm going to switch gears again, and this is sort of a survey of a lot of different topics, and then we'll get more into it as we go. In later sessions, we can cover different topics in more detail. But for the way the organization works, the members have an opportunity to vote on the programs, on the officers, the directors, the budget. There's so many things that when you participate in convention, that's where the decisions are, choices are made, votes are taken on impact on positions. You elect the people who are going to be on the board of directors. That's during the convention. Last year was convention for the National League. At the council, which is this year, this is for state representatives to come together with a national organization. It's not a decisional meeting, but it is something where we share. The National League will share information on programs that they're working on. The state representatives come in and give input, but it's not a decisional type meeting. Alabama has convention this year on May 20th and 21st is our convention. And at this convention, this is, the delegates will be voting on the business at hand, and that'll be sent out in the next week. We'll be sending out all the things that the delegates will be asked to vote on. And then at council, which was last year for us, you notice alternating years. In 2022, National had their convention. We had our council. This year, we've got our convention. National has their council. And so that it is sort of a similar situation. And then local leagues have annual meetings, and each local league, has theirs a little bit differently, but there's, at these points is when the board of directors asks the membership to vote. The delegates at the convention for national and state, and then at the local league, the membership would be giving input and to make voting on things for local league business. And so, switch gears one more time. So I know I'm going fast, and when we get done, we'll all take a deep breath. But so like I said, in the convention, there is the different leagues across the country. Several states work together on studies, for example, healthcare or environment, or different issues that were brought to convention last year. And it's kind of interesting because when you're there, people line up in a microphone and they'll introduce their business, and then people will speak for or against it. And then at a later time, the membership, the delegates at the convention will vote on it. Everything that's in this impact on positions was voted on at convention. So all the actions that the league takes, whether litigation or advocacy, must be grounded in this impact on positions or on our state positions. So you have your national impact on position on issues for national level issues, and then you have our state level positions document, which addresses statewide issues. And so all of those are either voted on for national issues at the national convention or at our local our state convention for the state issues. So every action that is authorized by the board of directors for National League would be authorized based on referral back to this document. And so I wanted to just give you a little bit of insight on how you can use this impact on issues when you go back to your local leagues and you're working on trying to figure out what action, if you recommend an action be taken, you need to go back and look at the impact on issues document or the state document. And, you've got a topic that you care about. You go to this document, it's uploaded every 2 years. I noticed that it's actually on Amazon now. $5, you can get your hard copy. I'll show you the electronic copy here in just a second. So when you're looking at determining positions that would go into this document, there is an upfront study. And then there's which defines the product that all the members of the league are looking at and studying. And then there's a concurrence phase, which is the time when every single league member, and if it's a state study, it would be all the members of the state League of Women Voters. There's almost 500 members. We would get all that we could together, everyone that wants to participate, and they would discuss the study and the questions that were being asked, and then they would come to a recommendation, which would be synthesized, and there would be a process of concurrence at each level. And then once we get to a final decision, that would be brought in as a proposed position that would be added to the impact on issues. For national, what that means is there's a cycle where if you've done a study at the state level, you would, when they call out and say, if you have something you want to bring to convention, submit it. And so people at different states across the country will input their requests for addition or consideration. And it gets voted on. And if everybody agrees to it, then it's added to the document, the impact on issues. I've already kind of gone through this study process here, but it is something that is a concurrence process. It's not a majority rules. It's a consensus that's reached via discussion. And you see here, well, let me go back. If it's a local issue, you would vote on that position at an annual meeting, state issue at state convention, and then national, you would have to vote on it at convention, and then it would be added to the impact on positions document if it was adopted. The concurrence process, this just describes the process that's used. I have had league members who've been in the league for decades tell me that some of the most fun times that they've ever had was when they were studying issues and doing and coming to concurrence. So this is everything you read in that document is everything you read in that impact on issues document has been arrived at through this same rigorous process. And this is why the league, I think the league our reputation is very solid when we take a position and we base it on these issues. Then we've got a basis for whatever, when we take a position, if it's related to these impact on positions, and we've got generations of league members before us that have studied it and helped us reach our position. Excuse me, my voice is a little bit out today, but so this is just an example. If you wanted to advocate for policies that increased availability for affordable housing in the community, the question is, can you? You would say the answer would be yes. And the reason, and this page number may not be current because the new league impact on positions just came out, but you can see there is a position on housing supply. So there's a lot in here for everybody. I'm going to stop sharing this one and I'm going to share the document itself. I can find it. There it is. Okay. So you saw earlier on these that chart, the website where you can go out and find the impact on issues. You can also buy you a $5 copy, which I like a paperback copy myself. But you can see here, and I'll zoom in. I'll try to. Let's see. Can you see that this right here? You can see that there's summary of public policy positions, which includes topics like representative government, international relations, natural resources, and social policy. And there's representative government under that. They've got several subsections. And so you can go through here and find a lot of what you might, things that you need to be able to when you want to take a position, you look through here and you can find it. And this is a searchable document, so it's pretty handy to have it online. The state positions document is also online, and I was going to talk about that on Monday in more detail, but today I wanted to focus on more of the national view. Let me go back. All right. So I cannot believe that I must have moved quick. So I guess Demetrius, I want to introduce Demetrius Fisher. He is such an amazing guy to work with. And he is the regional coordinator for the Southeast region. And you can see the member states that are considered part of the Southern hub. And I think he was saying people are wanting to get into our hub, other states. So I'm going to let him talk about what's going on in that area. And this Alabama is part of that. So.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy, and a pleasure to be with all of you this evening. As she mentioned, my name is Demetrius Fisher, and I serve as the Southeast Regional organizer that covers the 9 Southeastern states that includes Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And through this hub, we've been able to do some tremendous work together because we have done a study of where states are related to several issues so that we could figure out what the commonalities are, the common things, so that we can create trainings and resources to be able to better equip you guys on the ground to be able to do the amazing work that you do day in and day out. And the purpose of these, we do host a monthly meeting that started out with just state leaders, state presidents, but we've expanded that to include state board members and also local league leadership that wants to be a part of that. And those meetings are typically held the third Tuesday of each month at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And this is an opportunity for us to, as a region, to come together to kind of generate ideas. This allows us to bring insight so that we can bring those ideas together and eventually shape some decisions around that. But it also provides a decision-making opportunity, which is a space to make decisions or come up with agreements in terms of how we can work in the South in a more coordinated effort. But more importantly, it's an opportunity for us to share information, to be able to disseminate important information to everyone in the region so that everybody will know what is going on so that we can stay synchronized. And it's also an opportunity to build connections. We know that we are moving into state conventions and we're going to be faced with some leadership changes. So we wanted to be able to create a platform that leaders can be able to come and share what's going on in their state and figure out, what something may be great going on in Georgia that can benefit Alabama or Florida or Tennessee or whatever the case may be. So we create these spaces to be able to do that. We do have a upcoming monthly huddle for the month of April that will be on April 18th at 2 p.m. And I just dropped in the chat a link to the registration if folks want to be a part of that. If there's any particular topics that you want to address as a region, we offer that and try to figure out creative ways in terms of how we can keep this work moving. The purpose of these regional, this regional concept is to provide a little bit more intentionality in terms of our support to our state leagues. Because we know that sometimes, when reaching out, you don't know who at the national office you should be reaching out to. So our protocol is, me as the person that covers these 9 states, if it's something that's happening in your area, of course, alert your state. And then, of course, I know Kathy would definitely reach out to me to make sure that we are able to provide you with the necessary resources that you need. These meetings are created as a safe space for you to be able to come and learn and share. And we are always looking for opportunities to improve in terms of how we interact with each other. So feel free to join us at these regional hubs. They are recorded. So if you are interested in any of the previous recordings, just let us know. We will definitely provide that to you. We typically share out the agenda right before the meeting because things sometimes change. And we have to shift based on priorities. So we only have an hour together. So we try to maximize that and lift that up in a way that it makes sense for all of you. So really happy to be here. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat for me, or I'll share my contact information. You can also feel free to reach out to me as well. So with that, Kathy, anything else you needed me to lift up?
I guess, we could talk on Monday about we did Selma together, and looks like at the end of June, we're going to also be going to another event, which, this is how, to me, we could not do what we're doing without all of us working together to support the NAACP's effort to have basically a commemoration or acknowledgement of the 10th anniversary of the Shelby B. Holder. And so I think that's going to be great. And we really appreciate your help in trying to make all this happen.
Yes, and I just want to piggyback though. We are going to be probably all hands on deck as Kathy we are preparing for different scenarios for the SCOTUS decision day that will, around, the redistricting case in Alabama and also North Carolina. So I'm sure she will be looping many of you in to kind of talk about that strategy and figure out how we can best show up as a league. So Thank you for the opportunity to share in this space.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Demetrius. Well, I'm going to go back to my charts or slides. I don't know what's the better term. I can use both. But so I wanted to introduce now Leah Edwards, who has been our liaison from the national board now, I think for about 3 years at least. And we're very fortunate that she has been in our, basically with us, advising us on several issues. She is the treasurer for the National League. So we're very fortunate to have her also familiar with what we're doing in Alabama. And Leah, if I'm going to stop sharing to let you introduce yourself, and then I'll come back to the slides.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Kathy. Great to see everybody. Very happy to be here today. I've always really enjoyed working with Alabama over the past few years, and I'm going to take a little bit of time today to talk about some of the work that the National League is doing around the transformation roadmap and the League Structure Task Force. So happy to jump into that whenever you're ready, Kathy. Perfect. We can go to the next slide. So Kathy and Demetrius have shared a lot of great information about the League of Women Voters as a whole, but also a lot of the impact-focused work that we're doing. And today I'm going to share a little bit of information about some of the work that the League is doing internally to prepare ourselves as an organization for our next century. And as this quote from Dr. Turner says, building league power at every level is necessary for us to fulfill our mission for the next century. Next slide, please. And so at we have identified that there is opportunity for us to strengthen the League of Women Voters so that we are best prepared to defend our democracy and have the greatest impact we can moving forward. 3 of our priorities are to grow League membership, both in terms of the number of members, but also the diversity of our members, to strengthen the power at the grassroots level, which many folks on this call, as well as Demetrius, are very actively involved in, and to bolster our ability to further empower voters and defend our democracy. Increasingly, we've been seeing that fights over our democracy are happening in addition to the national level, often at the state level and the local level. And so we want to ensure that we have enough capacity and sort of manpower at all levels of the organization to be able to carry out this fight. Next slide, please. So I want to share a brief history of the transformation journey that the League has undergone. We have been thinking about some of these changes for several years now. Back in 2016, we conducted an organizational assessment where we received input from all levels of the organization to kind of better understand where we stood. And this resulted in a report called the Transformation Roadmap that was presented at convention in 2018 that outlined some opportunities that the League had to become more larger and more powerful and more impactful. Some of those changes were started to be implemented in 2020 as we rolled out our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which included the DEI policy that Kathy mentioned earlier, making that elevating it to the same level of importance as our nonpartisan policy, which is really the backbone of the League. And then more recently, for those of you who are at the convention in 2022, we rolled out a structure transformation plan that outlined 3 priorities for the League to initiatives for the League to transform for moving forward. And our current phase of the structure transformation plan, we're calling Framing the Future, and that is happening right now. So I'll dive into what those look like a little bit more in the next slide. Next slide, please. Great. So for those of you who are at convention, you heard that there are 3 parts to the structure transformation plan. The first is the membership and League rights and responsibilities. And this document there's 2 documents, one focused on members, one focused on leagues, that outline what it means to be a member of the organization and what it means to be a league as part of the tri-federated organization that Kathy had discussed earlier. We published a draft of these policies shortly after convention in 2022. We asked for feedback and we got lots of feedback over several months going into the fall. And the board has and staff have been working on incorporating this feedback. So the policies will be published in the coming months. But so that's kind of the first piece of the structure transformation plan that's been underway. The next 2 pieces are membership mechanics upgrade and investment in stake leagues. And these are kind of the current phase that we are focusing on and gathering information about. And these make up what are called the Framing the Future, which is our work that we're focusing on in 2023. If you go to the next slide, I want to dive into both of these in a little bit more detail. So for the membership mechanics upgrade, we are trying to make one system where people can become a member of the League of Women Voters that will be used across the country at all levels of League. So no matter where you are in the US, you would be able to go onto a portal, become a member of the League. The information as to where you're a member and your dues and everything would be automatically distributed to all the levels. And the reason that we think this is important is, 1, it will reduce administrative burden for leagues. I don't know how many of you have been involved with membership, but there's a lot of manual work, updating databases, collecting renewals, those sorts of things. And so we believe that the system will streamline a lot of that administrative work and enable our volunteers to focus on some other priorities for the organization. We also want to ensure that there's a consistent experience, that people across the country know they're joining one organization, they're members of the national, state, and local league, and they're able to kind of join in the same way nationwide. The second part of this initiative is state league investment. As I mentioned earlier, we're increasingly seeing that a lot of fights in the democracy space are happening at the state level. And we want to ensure that we have sufficient capacity and power to be able to empower voters and defend democracy and do all the work that we want to do at all levels of the organization. And we've identified that over there's around 800 leagues, I think, around the country. There's a lot of separate organizations, and there's some duplicative administrative work that's being done. So we're looking for opportunities to increase the capacity and to provide more support and reduce administrative processes at the state and local level. So these are the two areas that we're currently focusing on in 2023. Next slide, please. And how are we doing this? So there are two processes that are happening right now that are informing our work to move forward these two initiatives. The first is there are a set of working groups that are occurring, which are include members from local and state and national league across a wide range of geographies, age, race, locations. We want to have a diverse group as possible that are giving feedback and input and helping guide their processes on these initiatives. And these working groups are meeting over the course of spring 2023 and working to kind of give input so that we can develop the plan for what these two kind of initiatives will look like moving forward. The second, and this is where you come in, we have an all-member survey that was sent out, I think on April 3rd, so a few days ago, but you can also find it at the link that's shown on the screen, lwv.org/framingthefuture. We can drop that in the chat in a moment. Thank you, Demetrius, for dropping that in the chat. We are looking for input from all of the members of our league on to learn more about what your league looks like and what your experience has been like, so that we have input to shape these initiatives moving forward. And we would love for you all to participate. It's quick. I took it a couple of days ago, but we want to make sure that we're getting as much input as possible. And we just opened it up to all members to receive that. So encourage you to fill it out. Next slide, please. There's a little bit more data information here about the different Framing the Future working groups. I won't go through in a ton of detail, but we have the business, to have a high level overview. We have the business model working group that's making sure that we are, from a revenue standpoint, that any changes that we make are feasible and that they will result in a good member experience. We're also ensuring, we also have a data focus group that is understanding what data is needed by leagues to operate so that we can build that into systems. We have a functional specification working group that is making sure that the membership system that we're working to build, that consistent kind of join at all levels membership experience meets what the requirements of what we needed to be able to do. And then the league capacity working group is working on outlining a shared vision for what capacity will look like at this level of state and local leagues. Next slide, please. Perfect. So that's a high level overview of what the work that the league is doing on Framing the Future and the transformation roadmap. There's a couple of links here that I'll drop in the chat where you can get more information. We have details about all of the initiatives. Dr. Turner also published the State of the League 2023 address that talks a lot of about this as well. So I encourage you to look at that if you haven't seen it already. And all of this will be culminating into more information that will be presented at National Convention in June, or National Council, not Convention, National Council in June. So more details will be coming out, but for you to look forward to over the coming months, and there will be continued opportunity to give feedback over the course of this. I think that's all from me. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to Kathy.
All right, and I'm going to this is the final slide in the package, and just really to remind ourselves, in the words of Shirley Chisholm, that we don't make progress by standing on the sidelines, whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas. She was, this is very inspirational to me, because I feel like that's what we are working to make democracy work in Alabama. And that's, we're not sitting on the sidelines. And so I'm following in her footsteps. So I'm going to turn this share off. And I'd like to, Jean, if you'll bring Demetrius back up onto the screen as well, then we'll open it up to questions. And Jean, I have not been looking at the chat. Are there any questions in the chat right now?
Well, we did have a question as to whether the charts and slides will be, will the attendees have access to those with
Yes.
email to the attendees?
When we get through and I have the recording for the meeting, I'll send it and the slides out to everybody that registered for this forum tonight.
Okay, and we also had a question from Vanita Gill. She says, it's my understanding that the League of Women Voters of the Tennessee Valley is board driven, not membership driven. Is each chapter and state league throughout the U.S. board driven, or are some chapters and state leagues board driven and some membership driven? In other words, who makes and votes for the decisions or for activities such as get out the vote, etc., on which the members carry out?
So I will answer to my best of my ability, for my understanding on all of this, all of the local leagues in Alabama. They all have boards and they all have annual meetings where they ask the membership to give direction on bylaws changes and any other, like electing their officers and members. Just like these other leagues, the Tennessee Valley League also has working groups that get together and plan voter drives and other events. They get together and collaborate to get at what are they going to do to get out into the community. These are the activities that are meeting the mission of the league. And but there is a board that is running the league at every local league. There is a board of directors that is responsible for running their organization. Leah, I think that's the same with every league across the country, right?
Yes, there's the leagues across the country are generally structured the same way, where there is a board that is their members elect the board. The members can also approve the budget and bylaws and other details of the organization, but the board is guiding what activities the organization is involved with.
Yes, they're all basically the same. Okay, next question.
From Lisa Jones. So how do we actually get involved with our local league? I suppose the question is, how do we contact our local league and,
So
express our interest in volunteering? Wonderful question.
yes, it is. And so if you know who your local league, I don't know which local league you're affiliated with, but you can go to their website. They've got typically have a, how can I get involved? If you want to drop your, if you want to send me an email, I will connect you with the people in your local league so that so I get you to who it is that you need to talk to. On Monday, I will say, just a preview for Monday, we're actually talking state and local league. And I've invited 3 of our local leagues to come in and talk. And that would be the Mobile, Birmingham, and Tuscaloosa local leagues are going to talk in addition to the state. We're going to, at the state level, we're going to talk about the boards and the teams that, like the advocacy team I've asked Carol Mosley to talk about the DEI task force. I've asked Tara to come in and talk about the Alabama channel, because there's all kinds of needs for people who are willing to get in and, get in and get, get up to your elbows and work, because this is volunteer member driven activities in these teams. And then the local leagues the same way. And so I'm hoping you'll get inspired, people will get inspired. The other local leagues have similar programs, but I was just excited to be able to bring all that together for us on Monday night. But anyway, to answer your question, just contact me if you don't know who to ask, and I'll make it happen.
All right. Mary Ann Merchant asks, what is the difference between the convention and council?
So are you talking about state or local? I mean, national or local?
She
Golly,
doesn't.
I didn't say it right then either. National or state?
Lisa,
Mary Ann.
would you like to come off mute and express your question a little better than I did, please?
Well, I would say both.
Okay, so why don't I let Leah answer the national one and then I'll answer the state.
Sure. So the national convention happens every 2 years and then council is in between. And at national convention, any member can attend. Each local league and state league gets delegates. So based on the number of members of your league, you have a certain number of delegates, and those delegates can vote on national business, such as who is on the board, the budget for the organization, bylaw changes, those sorts of things. Council is open to state leaders, so it's specifically state focused versus being open to all members. And it's not voting on things like who's on the board or what the budget is, but it's typically giving input on larger strategic initiatives such as the transformation roadmap, sharing organizational updates, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. And so for the state, for our convention for this year, we're going to have several items on the plenary. There's a plenary session on Saturday and then a second plenary on Sunday. We would introduce business items like the budget, and if we have programs of study, or if we just want to vote on areas of emphasis instead of a program of study. And trying to draw it up there. I guess the main thing is there's business items, the slate of officers. We have gone to staggered elections, which is a little bit different than we used to be. So starting last year, we started our stagger, so to speak. And so we have 3 directors and 1 the secretary that get elected at the council now, and then we have 3 directors and all 3 officers that are elected at convention. And so what you're going to see this year is just a phenomenal slate of we're going to have a slate that's going to have different people on both Ed Fund and General Fund boards for directors. And then we'll have our 3 officers that are going to be on the slate as well. And so that's the slate. The business items for the council are voted on by the delegates, and then we listen on Saturday, and then on Sunday we vote on those same business items that we talked about on Saturday. At council, it's a one-day event. There's typically, in the past we didn't even have elections. Now we do, but there's no business. We just update the budget to give people a status on where the budget is, but there's nothing that's voted on at council. I hope I answered your question. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Benita Gill would also like to know, do the local or state bylaws ever supersede the national bylaws?
So I'm trying to think of an example, but there are things that the bylaws that the National League has certain bylaws that flow down to the state and flow down to the local. And so those are the ones that we have no choice on, that we flow down and we have to use them. But then there are other bylaws that are unique to state and local. Did I say that right, Leah?
Yeah, so there's the first few sections, I think the first 3 sections of the national bylaws, which include things like the nonpartisan policy and the DEI policy, are required to be adopted at all levels of the organization. So a local league can't not have the nonpartisan policy or not have a DEI policy. There has to be consistent across all three. But there are other elements of the bylaws, such as which officers are in the organization, terms, those sorts of things. Certain states or localities might have different regulatory requirements that include standard language that nonprofits would put in their bylaws, that sort of thing. That would potentially differ across different levels of league.
And I guess that gets back to the fact that we are federated, 3 different levels of federated organizations, that each one runs semi-autonomously, except that we're also part of a bigger organization. But each level is responsible for itself. And then we do have some guiding principles like the impact on positions and those 2 policies that she mentioned, the nonpartisanship and DEI, that we basically, you can't be a league unless you adopt those.
Okay, Benita would also like to know if you would describe the roles and functions of the board members when it comes to making decisions for the organization.
I can share, Kathy would probably be best able to speak to this for Alabama, but I will say that what a board member looks like and the decisions that they're making varies depending on the size of the league and where you are in the country and whether you have staff. So for example, at the national level, the board is going to be making decisions such as we hire the CEO, so that's one important decision. They'll be making major strategic decisions, but because we have a national staff, the staff is making a lot of the day-to-day decisions for the organization, and then the CEO, Virginia, is managing the staff, and they're helping guide their work. And so at the national level, the board members would not be involved in the day-to-day work. We would work with staff who are the ones who are kind of guiding that. And the board is more focused on higher level strategy and, of course, the decision to hire the sort of high level executive decisions. A lot of local leagues, though, for example, and oftentimes state leagues, there may or may not be staff. The board members may be much more involved in the day-to-day operations of the organization. And you can see the roles vary depending on how they're structured.
Yeah, and so for Alabama, we have 2 boards, and the board of directors for the general fund, we have 1 set of officers, which is the president. We could have a co-president, but it's president, vice president 1, vice president 2, and secretary and treasurer. That is the executive committee. And so from that, then we have 6 directors on each board that are elected. And those are, I talked about the staggered elections between convention and council now, that those 3 and 3 on each one of those boards gets elected depending on which year it is. And when a board is constituted, I should also say we do have some appointed positions too, that the elected board votes on who would be, if we appoint someone, it's based on the current board determines what the need is. And so those boards, we have bylaws that drives the roles of the officers and the roles of the directors. And so what we do is we have, and I'm kind of getting a little bit of a head start on next week, because Monday we're going to be talking about the state league organization. That was this, I'm trying to break this into bite-sized pieces so we can focus on, each piece so people can ask questions about the overall structure. But what we do is we set an agenda for our meetings. We present business. The board of directors discusses it with the officers there and the directors, and then we vote. And then we have time of discussion. Basically the process is: do you have a motion? We discuss it, and then we basically talk about the motion and then modify it as necessary. And then we take a vote. We follow Robert's Rules of Order. That's how a board meeting works. But we also have our board members, because we don't have any paid staff. Our board members are actually responsible for the running of the organization and also the officers. So, we're basically, that there's about 13, right? Currently about 13 people in the state league that are officers or directors, officers and directors. And between those two organizations, we are the ones that are coordinating and working with teams outside of the state league teams. We're coordinating efforts like, for example, the VRR network, I'm trying to think of what the other one, the DEI network, the advocacy team, where we're bringing in people from all the local leagues. These are the things we're doing. And I'm excited about the fact that we've got many opportunities that have opened up for the local and the state league members to work together to bring recommendations back to the state league for the state league board to vote on. That is, that's basically kind of really at a high level, but that's how we operate. We vote on anytime we want to, if we make a decision to do a collaboration, the board votes on it, and I guess that's about all I know to say right now. It's but the bylaws is kind of drives us as to what the roles and responsibilities of each person are. All right, so I would like to ask Demetrius a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So Demetrius, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done as far as like the topics, the VRR and different topics I was just wondering if you could talk about, it seems like there's a lot of interest at the state level, different states. I'd like for you to tell a little bit more about some of the things that have really taken off.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that have taken off, in the state, of course, Kathy mentioned the VRR. We've been really paying attention to, waiting for a decision day around the redistricting work, because we know that redistricting happens every 10 years, but it's still, we have to do that groundwork to get to that point. We've done a lot of coalition work around in the disability rights space. To be honest, we've expanded a lot of our partnerships. We are now working with a lot of organizations that we have not traditionally worked with in the past, which has, proven, beneficial for us. So we've really been kind of amping up our GOTV efforts, ensuring that we are making sure that folks have access to the ballot, making sure that they're able to get registered. So there's various campaigns that are coming out. As we know, we are waiting to hear more information about the ERA, which something may come out in the next couple of weeks, and it may not. So we're just asking folks to just to be on the lookout for that. I know that we are now really rolling out, and I know that Kathy, we kind of pushed it on them and she took it and ran with it, the League in Action. And that's going to be a coordinated way so that folks can get timely information about how they can plug into different things that may be going on within the state. So there's different tools that, that we try to use, and we try to do this in a coordinated way, not only in just Alabama, but across the region, because we don't want to do this work in silo. We want to figure out where we can partner, and some folks we just can't partner with, and we just have to be honest about that, because we always want to show up as a league and be our best self. So there's a lot of key priorities that, Alabama really showed up, when I was leading efforts around PPFM, with our redistricting work, that really kind of took off, that included all 50 states plus DC. Now we move into the next phase of thinking through how do we set ourselves up for success for the next go around, and taking those lessons learned, taking the input that we receive from all of you. So completing those, that members survey is really going to be helpful in helping us to shape how we make changes in the organization and changes for the good, because we know sometimes it can be frustrating. So we want to figure out creative ways to kind of lighten that heartburn and really engage folks at all levels. So we don't want it to seem as if it's the big I's and the little U's. We're all in this together. You know, we may be at the national, but we have to get our direction from you guys at the state and local, because why? You are closer to the work than we are. So we don't want to come in like we're telling you guys what to do, but we want to take your ideas and listen to what you have and figure out how we can create a solid strategy around combating some of the issues that you're facing in your community. So we're here. And like I said, if anything that, you know, that comes to mind or that you need assistance with, flag it for us, reach out to us. And we do our due diligence to make sure that we can get you an answer.
Thank you again. So I guess if we don't have any other questions, I just wanted to invite all of you to attend next Monday night, because this is going to be our next in the series, which I wanted to focus on more about, you know, basically this is at the 10,000 foot level. We're going to drop a little bit lower and talk about the state. And we're going to also introduce what the local leagues, you know, just to kind of talk about how local leagues operate. And then, you know, I know we're going to get excited about all the things that are happening, because a lot of times the local leagues is where the boots are on the ground. So Demetrius, got your hand up? Are you?
Yes, I just wanted to add one additional thing. If there are any trainings that you think you may need, please let us know, because we may be getting some of that from other states as well. I know just in Florida has not traditionally engaged in direct action. So we had to immediately jump in and create a strategy to make sure that they were trained to be able to engage in direct actions, risk and arrest and that sort of thing. So that has not been something that the league in Florida has traditionally been engaged in, but they have really taken off. And I know that many of you may have seen some of that in the news and just some of the amazing work that you are doing in Alabama. We've shared those best practices across the region and more importantly, across the country. So folks are really kind of looking at the South as a blueprint for some of the work that is going on in the league. So I really, really appreciate all of you leaning in, sharing your suggestions. We know that we can't do everything, but we figure out what we can do based on our capacity.
Yep. What is it? So goes the South, so goes the nation, because we seem to do things the worst or the best. I don't know. But so I did see somebody asked, will we get an invitation? If you go back and look at the newsletter that I for April, Callie, I'm getting my March. I guess it was March. This was in there where you could sign up for it. Jean usually sends out an email ahead of time. Did it have both of them, Jean? Does that?
Yeah, yes, it did. And I just put the link to register for the next meeting in the chat.
Yeah.
So please do sign up.
And Demetrius, one of the things I do see a need for is additional training on impact on positions, because one of the things I think it would really be helpful to have like a hands-on clinic where we pick some topics and then start digging in to try to figure out, you know, how do you use it? And then, you know, there's this whole series of topics that we're going to need to get people to help us come up with what do we need, because part of the reason we're doing this is we're growing our leadership. We'd like to have people who are local league members now that are not in leadership. You know, if they start participating in these forums and then the local leagues pull them in, or they come do stuff with a state league, then maybe they'll get comfortable and want to be involved with the boards at the local and state level. And I think every time you get a bigger picture view, then you start seeing why it's so important to get involved. So
yes, and we did have a national rollout of the impact on issues, but we are actually going to be doing a deeper dive, and I'm glad that you flagged it and you laid it out the back, that we're going to have one more specific for the Southeast region, especially considering the reoccurring themes that we are faced with here in the South that other states may not, you know, may not be dealing with at this moment. So yes, thanks for flagging that. And that is something that is coming down the pipeline. So feel free to continue to share opportunities for training or ideas, and we can definitely make sure that we can get those scheduled to keep folks really engaged.
Thank you. Thank you. Leah, did you have anything else you wanted to highlight for folks?
Not that comes to mind immediately, but happy if anything ever comes up, happy to help. And yeah, I will see at least some of you at council, most likely.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you all for attending tonight. And I saw Janine's comment. There is 3 little dots down at the bottom of my screen that I can click on and save. But I saved the chat. Well, when it records, it saves it. So I'll drop that into the message that I send out to people too. All right. Well, my voice is about to give out, but I've enjoyed tonight, and next week I think my allergies will be gone, so I'll be good. And thank you all.